The next book is, of course, the book of Exodus. Exodus. Again, not a Hebrew word, but a Greek word. And a Greek word which means departure or to go out from some place. The Hebrew word, or the Hebrew name for this book, is not Exodus, but Shemot. Shemot, which just means names. And again, it's the first word in the book itself. And so it's named after that first word. So Shemot. And what we need to understand with the book of Exodus is that we've now had the beginnings. We've had the setup. We've now seen how things have begun to deal with it. It's now we've dealt with the covenant with Abraham, which really sets up the rest of the concept. We've now been introduced to the family, who will later on become the family of God, the family or the chosen people of God under the sons of Jacob. And we finished the book of Genesis at the death of Jacob. But between now the book of Exodus and the book of Genesis and the book of Exodus is now a number of years. Because what's happened is that, of course, Joseph got his family to leave Canaan and come and stay in Goshen in Egypt. And there they've flourished, there they've grown into a nation. And so they've gone from really being just a small family tribe into being a nation, into being a large group of people. And of course we know the story of Moses that now develops out of this, where the people are enslaved by the Pharaoh. Pharaoh decides that population control is in order, and the way in which to do that is to kill off all the male children. And that way there's no possibility of soldiers coming against them. What we see though is that doesn't work so well. One of them escapes, and of course that's Moses, or Moshe, as he is known within Hebrew. He becomes the adopted son of Pharaoh's daughter, and the rest of the story you can read for yourself as you go through your notes and as you read the book of Exodus. After 40 years of being in Pharaoh's court, Moses kills an Egyptian, and he then runs into the desert, and is in the desert of Midian for another 40 years. That number 40 is a significant number because it gives us an insight into the book of Exodus. If you want to understand Exodus, then that number 40 plays a very important role. Because what the number 40 is really about the concept of preparation. Preparation. Moses is being prepared for his work. He's 40 years in the court of Pharaoh, because he's got 40 years to learn the language, to learn the culture, to learn the rituals. I mean, if we wanted to go and see the Prime Minister, how would we do it? Would we get an entrance to see the Prime Minister? Most probably not. If we called up and said, I'd like to see the Prime Minister, most probably the best that you would get is to speak to some deputy secretary. And that's how we would actually be able to connect with the Prime Minister. How did Moses, this itinerant Jew who had killed an Egyptian, how did he get access to Pharaoh when he came back? Well, the only way we can think that he got access was because he knew how. He was able to say, I've been here, I know the protocols, I know the ways in which to get access to the Pharaoh. And of course the Pharaoh was a far greater figure. In fact, in Egyptian mythology, the Pharaoh was the actual embodiment of the god Ra. Now, how do you get in to get an audience with a god? Well, the only way you can do that is if you actually have some entry framework. Well, for 40 years, Moses is being prepared. Then he goes in the desert, and in fact, it's the desert where the Israelites are going to spend the next 40 years. And he's there for 40 years, getting to know the lay of the land, the water holes, the pastures, the people. You can see that word 40, or the number 40, keeps recurring as a process of preparation. And in a sense, that's really where the book of Exodus is about. It's about starting in slavery and ending in freedom. And it starts in the gods of Egypt. It starts in the context of Egypt. And the book finishes in the context of building the tabernacle. This place which was going to be the focal point of the Jewish faith. This Jewish faith was going to be focused on the tent of meeting, the place where God would meet with them, where the Ark of the Covenant was going to be present, and where they would be able to connect with who God was. That was the focal point of what they were on about and the connections that they had. And so what we see is that the book of Exodus is filled with those themes. The theme of nationhood, the theme of moving out, the theme of preparation, the theme of God's power. And you can see God's power in the various miraculous events that are happened within that. Now again, when you look at that book, therefore, remind yourself, what are those things saying to me about foundations? It's the foundation of being the people of God. It's the foundation of seeing God's presence with us. If you look at the book of Exodus, they introduce us to the pillar of fire and the pillar of cloud, one for the daytime, one for the nighttime. It's in the book of Exodus that we see God's mighty acts for His people. Do you see how the book of Exodus therefore sets up? That just as Genesis set up family and community, so Exodus sets up people and power and relationship and sacrifice as part of the foundations of God and the relationship we have with God through the law.